Okay, my name's Tim Kelly and this is the second of a pair of videos in which I discuss narrative form in film, using The Wizard of Oz as my prime example. Here my emphasis will be on film style and how that contributes to the overall form of the film. But before I do that, let's just remind ourselves of the key points of the preceding lecture. And this is summarising chapters 2 and 3 of film art. A story or narrative is a series of events linked by cause and effect and occurring in space and time. The story is the whole chain of events in chronological order, whereas the plot is the order the story is presented to the viewer. Filmmakers build the plot from the story, but viewers build the story from the plot. Hence, the viewer plays an essential part in constructing the story. Narrative form is conditioned by viewer expectations and the expectations the filmmakers build up. Suspense is a result of the delayed fulfilling of an expectation. Surprise is when an expectation is cheated. The viewer carries their experience from life and other artworks, including their understanding of genre conventions, to the film, and these contribute to the film form. We also mentioned last week the 4 key stylistic elements peculiar to film which constitute part of its form. As a reminder, they are mise en scène, what is put in front of the camera to be filmed, such as characters, costumes, props and setting. Cinematography, how the mise en scène is filmed, at its most basic, where you put the camera. Editing, how you link parts of your films on a shot-by-shot basis. And sound, how the aural elements create mood, illustrate character, and motivate plot development. So in this lecture, I'll examine a few components of each stylistic element in relation to The Wizard of Oz, starting with some components of mise en scène. To begin with, characters, and how these provide links between Kansas and Oz. Notice that the characters in Oz are played by the same actors we met in Kansas. Zeke is the lion, Huck is the scarecrow, and Hickory the Tin Man. And of course, Professor Marvel is played by the actor who is the wizard. You've also got Miss Gulch as the witch. And in terms of costume, you have the prosaic realism of Kansas versus the fantastic costumes of Oz, as we saw a moment ago. We have props which link the two narrative locations. Notice how Miss Gulch's bicycle transforms into a broomstick. Colour is of course highly prominent. Remember the scene when Dorothy enters Oz, from the monochrome of her Kansas home to the vibrant colours of Oz. And what does this imply vis-a-vis Dorothy's notion that there's no place like home? Well, surely the vibrant beauty of the magical world out there in Oz acts as a visual counter-argument to, or ironical reinterpretation of Dorothy's assertion that there's no place like home. If we take just one element, the yellow brick road, Bordwell et al. Analyse its stylistic and narrative function as follows. In The Wizard of Oz, the yellow brick road has no meaning in and of itself. But if we examine the function it fulfills in relation to the narrative, the music, the colours and so on, we can argue that the yellow brick road does suggest meanings. Dorothy's strong desire to go home makes the road represent that desire. At the same time, because it's made of yellow bricks, rare in our everyday world, it partakes of some of the magical qualities of Oz. The road encapsulates the tension between Oz and Kansas. So for any element of style, ask what is its function in the overall story? How does it work as a part of the narrative form? I'll go quickly here as I think I'm stating the obvious. So camera movements call attention to story action. The camera moves to follow the characters. We have close-ups on key elements, such as the ruby slippers or the image in the crystal ball. Long shots to show the panoramic scenes in Oz. And perhaps less obviously, camera height and angle are used to emphasize the power of the wizard. So take a look at these two stills. Spatially, our heroes are located at the bottom of the frame, the wizard at the top. The camera looks down on the heroes, diminishing them, making them look small and weak, in comparison to the wizard, whom the camera looks up towards. The difference in camera height and angle illustrates the power relations between the two. There's probably not a lot to say about the editing, as it follows the classical Hollywood pattern and functions to present the story smoothly whilst masking its own technique. It presents the story in chronological order. It has the common pattern of screen duration being shorter than plot and plot being shorter than story. The screen duration is 97 minutes. The plot takes place over a number of days, and the story goes back much longer, referencing events that took place in the past, such as Auntie Em looking after Dorothy when she was ill, the Tin Man having been rusted fast since the winter rain, and so on. Anyhow, on to sound. Sound is particularly important in The Wizard of Oz, being a musical. To begin with, music is linked to character. Take Miss Gulch, for example, who has the same music as the Wicked Witch. We also have a musical motif in the repetition of "We're off to see the wizard" every time Dorothy meets a new character. Let's take a quick look at this.
You're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. You'll find he is a whiz of a whiz, if ever a whiz there was. If ever, oh ever a whiz there was, the Wizard of Oz is one because of the wonderful things he does. You're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
To Oz?
To Oz!
We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. We hear he is a whiz of a whiz, if ever a whiz there was. If ever, oh ever a whiz there was, the Wizard of Oz is one because of the wonderful things he does. We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
To Oz? To Oz!
We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. Here he is, a whiz of a whiz, if ever a whiz there was. If ever, oh ever a whiz there was, the Wizard of Oz is one because of the wonderful things he does. We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. Oh, we're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. We hear he is a whiz of a whiz, if ever a whiz there was. If ever, oh ever a whiz there was, the Wizard of Oz is one because of the wonderful things he does. We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
Note that this repetition is a structuring principle and functions to move the journey onward. Hence, it is part of the narrative form of the film. And note that we use the term motif for any element that repeats itself. It could be a colour, a song, a dance, or part of the choreography, a camera movement or position, or a particular editing choice. And if we take Somewhere Over the Rainbow, it's not simply a pretty song that has been stuck in the film. Let's listen.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me. Where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops, that's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh, why can't I? If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why can't I?
So, Somewhere Over the Rainbow sets the theme for Dorothy's desire to escape, and hence motivates her running away, and prefigures the colourful fantasy land of Oz. The songs also provide humour, my favourite moment being the handing out of the death certificate along with the line about being sincerely dead. They provide pleasure in an aesthetic, emotional and intellectual sense, and note that the wizard is exposed in part by a sonic feature. Let's watch this bit.
To that man behind the curtain. The great and Oz has spoken.
Who are you?
Oh, I am the great and powerful Wizard of Oz.
You are?
So, isn't The Wizard of Oz a deeply satirical film? Subversive and cynical even. The wizard, symbol of power and authority, is a hoax. God is dead. The big other is a fraud. And look at the way knowledge is dealt with. The scarecrow is given a diploma to prove he has a brain. So the university functions to hand out degree certificates, not as a marker of intelligence, but much more cynically as a substitute for intelligence. Thank God it doesn't happen here. Okay, let's generalise and summarise by referring back to Bordwell, Thompson and Smith. By form, we mean the overall set of relationships amongst the film's parts. Formal elements that help structure the narrative include patterns, parallelisms, repetition and variation, motifs, beginnings, middles and endings. But note that in relation to film, these could be stylistic elements, so there might be patterns of colour, parallel camera movements and repeated audio elements, such as songs. So all the stylistic elements we talked about today contribute to this, along with those elements discussed in the earlier lecture on form: time, space, causality, plot, story, surprise, suspense, viewer expectations, and so on. One thing I haven't talked about is point of view in film, but I'll let you read up on that yourselves. And before we get to the end of the lecture, let's get to the end of The Wizard of Oz. So my last comments will be in relation to the ending. This is always a prestigious place in terms of film form. It brings the various elements together and resolves the narrative dilemmas. But what is the end? How are we to make sense of it? Let's remind ourselves.
Close your eyes and tap your heels together 3 times. And think to yourself, there's no place like home. There's no place like home.
There's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no There's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no
Wake up, honey.
There's no place like home.
There's no place like home. There's no...
Dorothy, dear. It's Aunt Em, darling.
Oh, Annie Em, it's you.
Yes, darling.
Hello there. Anybody home? I just dropped by because I heard the little girl got caught in a big... Well, she seems all right now.
Yeah, she got quite a bump on the head. We kind of thought there for a minute she was going to leave us.
Oh.
But I did leave you, Uncle Henry. That's just the trouble. And I tried to get back for days and days.
There, lie quiet now. You just had a bad dream.
Sure. Remember me?
Your old pal, Hunk?
Oh.
Me?
Hickory?
You couldn't forget my face, could you?
But it wasn't a dream. It was a place. And you were there.
Oh.
But you couldn't have been, could you?
Oh, we dream lots of silly things when we...
No, Aunt Em. This was a real, truly live place. And I remember that some of it wasn't very nice, but most of it was beautiful. But just the same, all I kept saying to everybody was, I want to go home. And they sent me home. Doesn't anybody believe me?
Of course we believe you, Dorothy.
Oh, but anyway, Toto, we're home. Home. And this is my room. And you're all here. And I'm not going to leave here ever again. Because I love you all. And, oh, Auntie Em, there's no place like home.
On an emotional level, we are happy that Dorothy is back in Kansas and empathise with her statement that there's no place like home. But is it as simple as that? Or are there possible levels of irony and doubt? For on one level, yes, it's true there is no place like home, but also there are formal stylistic elements that question this. We are back to the black and white, the lack of colour of Kansas. That vibrancy is lost. And the lure of Oz is still there in the audio track. We hear the melody of Over the Rainbow. And this formal stylistic element, this non-diegetic sonic element, itself acts as a counter to the dialogue. There is always a big out there that will attract a young woman, a young person. And we also know as adults that the girl cannot stay a child forever. And that contrary to her words, she will leave her family and home and forge new adventures, as the actress notoriously did. So these stylistic elements, peculiar to film, help us interpret and make sense of the narrative and question the more obvious narrative elements, such as the words of the characters. So to sum up, there are a whole host of stylistic elements peculiar to film which contribute to its structure and to its narrative form. We'll analyse these stylistic elements, specifically mise-en-scène, cinematography, editing and sound, over the coming weeks.